What's up, guys? This is Hell Caesar, along with my main man Alex, the White Wolf, OBC. Together, we make up a part of the Wolfpack Perspective. There's going to be other guys coming on, other gals coming on. So far, busy schedule for them, and we just ain't made it there yet. But as per usual, what's kind of our norm, at least as of now, we're going to be talking about a couple of different movies, same franchise, a fairly new franchise in the Venom franchise. And as a disclaimer for Alex's knowledge of Venom, I'll let him tell you that.
So before about an hour ago, I had not seen the entire franchise. I had not seen Venom 1 until Saturday when we talked about what our next topic should be. So my comic book knowledge is basically none other than what I've read online. And my movie knowledge on these two is from about 3 hours total of looking into the franchise. So probably not going to know a lot, and a lot of you will probably think I'm an idiot, but hey, I'll give my 2 cents anyway.
Yeah. And that's okay. That's okay. We both were somewhat comic fans. I think his comics were a little different than mine. I was a big Spider-Man fan back in the mid and early 90s. And there was no cooler looking villains than Venom and Carnage. They were both the same. It was both the symbiote race or species that came in, but man, they looked so different from one another. They had their own strengths and weaknesses. And I think that's a big part of where I'm going to really shit on Venom 2. But we'll start out talking about Venom 1. Kind of a brief synopsis of Venom 1, very different from the comics. You got the journalist Eddie Brock, who's in San Francisco. Got his fiance, Anne Wang. I think that's how you pronounce her last name, Wang. Pretty good romance. You see that from the get-go. Eddie's he's a pretty good journalist. He likes to go out. He likes to get scoops. He's a very friendly, popular guy with the locals that he works with, even some of the homeless folks. You see that in the movie. And you get introduced pretty quick to Carlton Drake, main villain of the movie. I guess, depending on your perspective of it, he wants to advance civilization. He sees the frailty and the weakness in the human body, and he is the boss and the owner of the Life Foundation. Life Foundation was big in the comics in the mid-90s, so that was at least nice to see that touched on. He sends off a rocket. His rocket comes back. I believe they have, could have swore it was 3 symbiotes in captivity. One gets loose. The Riot symbiote gets loose. It starts going from host to host. It's a very bad dude. Eddie Brock jumps in. He uses his girlfriend's information, unbeknownst to her, to go get a scoop on Carlton Drake's side business, kind of what he's got going on, and that ends up going bad for him, for his relationship. He gets fired as a result of it, and ultimately goes in trying to get any more information, and Venom gets loose. Venom gets on him. They bond. It's kind of an interesting take on it, I would say. I didn't hate that at all in Venom 1. How did you like Eddie Brock and Venom when you saw them together? What did you think of it?
The funniest thing is, dude, when I seen Eddie Brock for the first time, I said, that's Hell Caesar. He had on the leather jacket, had the hair.
Kind of a loser.
On. No, not the loser part. Not the loser part. And I don't think you would screw somebody over to get a good topic or a good scoop, but
when I just the look, Falcon, I will say that.
Just the look wise, it reminded me of you. I liked Venom, the first one. I mean, I actually liked it a lot. But again, I didn't have the comic book knowledge. Looking, through research, I found out where it's different than the comic books. Not the same origin story. Not really the same necessarily look for Venom in some aspects. But overall, I thought Tom Hardy did a great job as Eddie Brock. I think Tom Hardy's a great actor. Riz Ahmed, or maybe Slay in the pronunciation of his name. I've always liked him as an actor. On a side note on that, if you've ever seen The Reluctant Fundamentalist, it's a different movie. It's not anything nerd related. I had to watch it in college and do a paper on it, but it's not a bad movie. I highly suggest if you got time to watch that, to watch it. Like I said, as a standalone movie with no prior knowledge, I liked it. I can see why people with the prior knowledge disliked it.
Well, The look was pretty good. The symbiote Venom, the actual Venom look was pretty good. He was a little too big for my taste. And lately, the last 20 plus years, though, in the comics, he's been depicted as way bigger than he started out. But the look was pretty good. I liked the banner back and forth between them in the first movie. I liked the fact the symbiote had a mind of its own, and it would come out and it would speak, and you knew what it was thinking. It wasn't Eddie Brock trying to let the audience know what it was thinking. The right symbiote and Drake being the main villain, I didn't care much for that just because I knew what was going to be coming in the second or at least the third movie, which was going to be Carnage. Basically, two goo monsters going at it in the first movie, and you're guaranteed to see that now in the second movie. Would have liked to have seen a little different villain maybe for the first movie. I thought he looked good. Eddie Brock, he's kind of, I don't know, not the sociopath that he ends up being in the comics for a long run. Just kind of a loser, and it wanted you to know he was a loser. I don't know. Portrayal wise of Eddie Brock was just okay for me, but ultimately I enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed seeing Venom on the big screen, so I gave it a pass. Don't really know what I would rank it if I had to rank it, but I can tell you that Rotten Tomatoes, that I don't endorse and I don't like Rotten Tomatoes, but their tomato meter as of now gives it a 30% versus their audience, which gives it an 81%. So clearly the audience actually went out of it with a pretty good opinion.
And one thing I will say about these two movies, I'm not like a huge Marvel fan. I wouldn't even consider myself like a moderate Marvel fan. But this movie kind of reminded me of Deadpool and kind of the rawness and the more dark aspects of it. I remember in the first one specifically, Venom's trying to get Eddie Brock to run out a window, and then he stops. It's like, no, no, no. And then he throws out a little sly mark there in reference to maybe a cat, something along those lines. I'm just like, this is awesome. So
yeah,
I do like that aspect.
It popped well in the movie theater. I was laughing at that line myself. That was great. Visuals on that movie too. Once he finally got the courage to go up that building, went to the top of the building, sat up there, looked around, reminiscent of a Spider-Man type deal. One of my favorite scenes, actually. Just him sitting on the top of that skyscraper until the plane comes through. But
let's move on to the second one, Let There Be Carnage, because just from the little research I've done, I feel like there's more of a split maybe in the fandom or more hate for the second one than the first one, at least from just a little bit I've seen. Is that true? I mean, you know way more about it than I do.
Just with the diehard fans, I think so.
So why is there such a split? Because for me, coming with no outside knowledge, I didn't like the movie as well, but I didn't understand the hate that it gets compared to the first one. So maybe you with some background can elaborate and tell me why that is, because I truly don't know.
Carnage, Cletus Cassidy, is a psychopathic mass murderer. The fact the first 5 minutes of that movie was setting up a love story between him and Shriek. What is her name? What is Shriek's actual name? I can't think of it. Francis something.
Yeah, it's Francis.
God almighty. Terrible. Terrible. The worst 5 minutes of an opening movie I think I've seen in the last 5 to 10 years on a movie that I would want to watch. Not something on Shudder or Sci-Fi I pull up. I almost got up and out right there. It's like, man, this is so stupid. Cletus, yeah, I mean, he ends up liking Shriek in the comics, man, but he is not afraid to smack somebody. Obviously, he wouldn't hurt a hair on her head in this movie, but that was dumb. I didn't like the way their powers were. Shriek's powers in the comics has always been sound and concussive based, but it come from her hands. She wasn't screaming at nobody. You know how many idiots I've seen on Facebook and Reddit. Hey, man, there's Scream, man. There's Scream. She's going to be a symbiote, dog. She's going to be a symbiote, bro. And it's like, no, dude, that's Shriek. I know it looks like Scream, and you could assume that since there is already 2 symbiotes, the Scream symbiote will make an appearance because the woman in there is screaming. That's Shriek. She is not a symbiote. She was a host briefly, but that was with Carnage. So you had major confusion on the guys that never picked up a book. That's just me kind of complaining about that, social media. But her powers were always based with using her hands. She could even use it for some levitation. That caught me off guard immediately. Did not like that. Is that the way they portrayed her?
Do you know if that's the same actress that plays Calypso on Pirates of the Caribbean?
That is the same actress that plays Calypso. Naomi Harris
Yeah, I
And
didn't
she was a
realize
good
that.
actress as Calypso. I thought so. Calypso, Tia Dalma, the witch, was in the two of the Pirates movies. I like those movies, man. I thought she'd done a great job in those movies.
Oh yeah.
But gosh, what terrible. And again, the movie cast her. It is what it is. I thought she was a terrible choice to be Shriek. And as we do this video, I'm sure my man Alex, who does the editing, will be popping up images for people that don't really know anything about the comics to show you the difference and exactly what they look like. Terrible casting. The dialogue was absolutely atrocious. I don't know what they were going for with her. Some of her dialogue was so terrible. And again, that ain't anything she chooses to do. But that wasn't any good. Same complaint I have with Woody Harrelson, who I'm also a fan of. Much bigger fan of him because I grew up watching him in movies like Kingpin. But gosh almighty, dude, I couldn't tell you what he was going for with Cletus Cassidy. And I remember, I think it was the director, Andy Serkis, that was saying he liked Woody Harrelson because of what he's seen him do in Natural Born Killers in the 90s. He was a psychopath. He was Mickey Knox. Was awesome, charismatic, nothing comparable, not even close to what he tried to do as Cletus Cassidy in Carnage. God awful performance as far as that goes, and that's just on the acting side of it. His dialogue was terrible too.
And see, and if I keep looking over here, guys, I'm sorry. I run another business. I got like 3 or 4 things going on. One of my employees is texting me, so
He is busy.
I'm trying to keep him doing what he's supposed to do and do this at the same time. But watching Venom 1 and seeing the hate it had from the comic book side, going into Venom 2, I thought that the hate for that movie would be solely based on, hey, this isn't the comic. But after I watched Venom 2 this morning, I didn't hate it, but I definitely didn't like it, if that makes sense. Woody Harrelson is a great actor, but in this, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's a script, I don't know if it was the story or what. I hated his character.
Yes.
He's supposed to be a psychopath killer, and nothing he did in this movie made him look like a psychopath killer, other than kill the little cartoons of him killing his grandma and mother at one point was the most psychopathic thing in the whole movie. Also, it could just be me, but I feel like the CGI in this movie sucked, and I don't know why. It should have been the same as the first one. It might be the same as the first one, but just watching it on screen, it felt worse to me.
Well, I think they had a lot of issues because this movie was supposed to come out in October 2020. The first one come out, I think it might have been October of 2018. So 2 years later, you're going to have it right, and then boom, COVID's hits. They use that as an excuse to delay it. It then gets moved to June 2021, then 2 or 3 different dates in September, 2 dates in October before finally coming and settling at October 1st. I saw it in theaters. Carnage fighting Venom was probably the best part of the movie, but I hated the look of Carnage. Carnage was always he was muscular and he was strong, but he was similar to Spider-Man in size, only a little bigger. Venom was much bigger, but Carnage was always much stronger than Venom and Spider-Man combined. And that's what made him so cool, was that you got this brute in Venom, but Carnage is going to kick his ass most of the time in a fair fight one-on-one, because he used to do that pretty regularly.
There's a line in that movie that, just speaking off what you said, was perfect. Venom at the start of their fight says something along the lines of something about dying. Eddie Brock thinks he's talking about Carnage. Yeah, that's the attitude. And he's like, no, I meant us. We're going to die. I thought that was funny. But go ahead. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay, man. And again, most of my complaints just come back. Carnage was the tongue and the teeth. If you ever look Carnage comics up and you pull up scans, once in a blue moon, you'll see his teeth are white like Venom's. 99% of the time, they are red and black. He does not use a tongue hardly ever. To me, when I looked at those two, especially in the trailers and the art, they look like, it was like Mortal Kombat 1 back in the day. They were palette swaps. They look so similar, just changing the colors. The thing it did do right with Carnage was that it made his suit very lively. The tendrils always flailing. He always had stuff going on. Tendrils, though, man, they were too meaty. You got like a foot in diameter of symbiote meat coming at somebody. Usually they're like an inch. Like everything about it was just so weird looking to actually see on screen. Did not like it. Those are a lot of minor complaints, but the teeth I couldn't get over. The tongue I couldn't get over. Never could get past any of that. The fight was fun, but man, why did they have one fight? You could have had two. You could have had Venom and Brock get their ass kicked midway through the movie in the first fight. And it could have been about them having to bond and come back together and unite in order to defeat Carnage, who clearly wasn't fully bonded because Cletus loves Shriek and Carnage don't give a crap about anybody. But no, they break up. Venom and Brock break up, not because they got beat by Carnage, but because of arguments. Because Brock wouldn't let him eat bad people, which makes no friggin' sense. Because I kind of thought they had established that toward the end of Venom 1. Lethal Protector storyline took place in California and San Francisco. That's what that was kind of based around. And all of a sudden, Eddie Brock gets a conscience and won't let him eat bad guys.
One of the biggest critiques I've seen of that movie before I watched it, explained it, I think, perfect. It's a 2.5-hour movie condensed into an hour and a half. There's only one fight at the very end. The entire first 85% of the movie is useless, except, I mean, it's just useless. If they would have turned Woody Harrelson's character into Carnage in the first 30 minutes, then let them fight, like you said, maybe Venom gets his ass kicked, and then they come back, not trained, but maybe want to give up, kind of have their little motivational, we got to do this type deal, and then come back for the final fight. Spider-Man, the original Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire, they fought the Green Goblin how many times before their ending matchup? I know at least once when they're having like the little thing with the mayor and all the city. So, and I thought that movie was great. This movie is boring, honestly, up until the ending, and then it's over.
It's one of those times in theaters, it's thinking, all right, at least we're finally to the big fight. Let's see how this goes. And man, what a waste. I don't know if these studios and some of these people get into it and it's just too late to back out. But man, anybody could have read that script and said, this ain't going to work. Let's not force it. Let's give it another year. And they'd already delayed it a lot. They blamed it, like I said, on COVIDs and Corona and all that. And that might have been the case, or that might have just been a good excuse. Should have been a 2+ hour movie. And that was the first thing that I saw, now that you brought the time of it up, was when I saw it was 90 minutes. I was like, oh, 90 minutes to introduce. You're introducing Carnage now. You've already got Cletus, but you're introducing Carnage. You're going to have to touch on backstory. Clearly, there's other characters like Shriek. The police officer, might have been Mulligan is his name.
It is.
That is future down the road going to be Toxin. Probably if they do another movie. I don't know that they will. But then, dude, you get to the end of it. All right, it's over. And your after credit scene was so friggin' weird. Like, it didn't make a lot of sense. Like, Venom was going to share with Eddie all this knowledge, and then boom. I don't know. A shift in reality happens, I guess. And
honestly, though,
Spider-Man.
I didn't even know that the Shriek was another character in the franchise until you just told me that. So that I feel like there was a lot of knowledge left out, just based off when we've been sitting here shooting this video.
Yeah, but
I didn't realize it was another character. I didn't realize Mulligan was going to turn into another character. Is that how Carnage is made in the comic books? Is the same way as in the movie? Or
he's an offspring of Venom. When Carnage or Cletus Cassidy and Eddie Brock were cellmates. Yeah, Eddie's been in prison. Eddie was a bad dude. People don't know that if you just watch the movies. The symbiote comes back. He becomes Venom. When he's escaping and he busts a big hole in the rock wall and he's gone, Cassidy notices something dripping, and Venom had an offspring, which was Carnage. And I think the Carnage symbiote it didn't start out like brooding evil like it was in the movie. It was more of a blank slate. It was a baby, brand new. It bonds with Cletus Cassidy, who is such a psychopath, but he is so psychotic that their bond is I versus we. Eddie Brock in the comics is always we, referring to him as the symbiote. Carnage was always I. Cletus had mastery over that symbiote right out of the gate. It was. You've got hybrid Scream and they were part of the Life Foundation. That was part of that. Riot was also one of them. I can't think of all the symbiotes that was part of the Life Foundation, but that's how they were born. Toxin, who ends up with Mulligan, he's the seed of Carnage. He ends up being the seed of Carnage. And as they produce, the child symbiote is more powerful than the adult symbiote, or the father, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, man, you butchered some stories. I wasn't a fan. I don't really have a whole lot of good to say about Venom 2 at all. Venom 1 was okay. It was fun. It was fun. I understood that they were trying to go for. They just wanted to put him on the big screen. Hated part 2. Should have not been made. Should have just left it if they were going to ruin Carnage like that.
Yeah, just to finish up, coming from a non-Marvel background, non-comic book background, Venom 1 I thought was cool. Venom 2, it was cool, but it was kind of boring, and it just didn't pique my interest. I'm not excited to see where it goes. I'm not that into the franchise.
Hey, bud, this is stuff that was important to me because, yeah, as I've gotten older, and I'm much older now, the characters that I still like in comics, my favorite characters have changed. They're very different from what they was when I was a kid. But Carnage and Venom they look so different from one another, and they had their own stories and their own perks. That movie, they look so similar. I couldn't tell you, man, how excited I was as a kid to go in the movie store, go to the video game section back in the mid-90s, and there's the red Maximum Carnage disc for Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. On the shelf, 95% of the discs that you would see for other games were black with the cover art. This one was a red disc with a red cover art. To me, that was always so cool. And that was the first full series of any comic I ever collected. And that took me into my early 20s collecting it. Maximum Carnage debuted in 1993, and it was a 14-part series. And it brought Venom, it brought Spider-Man, the Black Cat, Cloak and Dagger. They came in, Captain America made an appearance, Iron Man made an appearance, and they had to stop Carnage, who broke out of Ravencroft. He brought Shriek along with him. That's how they got together. They run into a few other characters like the Demo Goblin, the Doppelganger, and they terrorized New York for days and days on end. And one of the things about Shriek that was kind of neat in the comics is, aside from having concussive blasts, she could cause hate and anger to swell up in large groups of people with her powers. And that played a factor. It looked like a hopeless situation. Obviously, it took 14 issues to resolve. It was a heck of a run. My favorite run to this day. Loved it. So, childhood nostalgia is not really what it used to be. Not in this day and age.
And
Got crapped on.
Again, guys, we're a decade apart, literally in age. He's 30s, almost 40s. I'm late 20s, almost 30s. So this stuff was a lot newer to him. I wasn't even born for the beginning of this, and so his knowledge base on this stuff and mine are completely different. So just to throw that disclaimer out there. If it feels like he's doing the talking, it's because he knows what he's talking about, and I'm sitting here
I just got more to gripe about. I could complain about this movie. I could continue to complain about Harris's portrayal and Harrelson's portrayal. I could just really take a shit on them, but I don't want to. They're good actors in their own right. Casting for both was terrible. Even Harrelson, as much as I loved him in movies like Kingpin, I knew when he got cast, it's like, all right, they're playing off of Natural Born Killers. If he done the same if he played Mickey Knox, but as Cletus Cassidy, I would have been okay with that in a way, as long as they darkened him up. But dude, it was just weird. I mean, one of these days I'm going to read that shooting script just to refresh myself on it, but it was awful. Awful.
Do you have any more closing remarks before we end this video?
Well, again, I don't endorse Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's garbage and I think it's manipulated. But just looking at that one, Venom 2 had a 59% tomato meter versus an 84% audience score. So there was people that liked it. And I'm sure it's made money also. And
it made money.
Thing down the road. Maybe they'll fix it. I don't know.
That was the one thing I did see. It made a lot of money, I think. And even though fans didn't like it, they can't argue that it did well at the box office.
And what do you do as a fan? Do you say, okay, we don't want it to make money because it was garbage and maybe it'll take 5-10 years to reboot it? Or do you say, well, we're glad it made money. Maybe if we pester the people that make it enough, they'll they will kind of make things closer to what they should be. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that.
I think Spider-Man's so hot right now that if they throw the Spider-Man connections in, maybe make a Spider-Man Venom movie together, it would do very, very well, box office wise and maybe fan wise.
Mm.
But with that said, we're the Wolfpack perspective, just giving our thoughts and opinions on these topics. Disagree, agree, leave a like, comment, trash comment like we always say, free speech, no censorship. But let us know what you guys think.
We won't always, or at least I won't always complain as much as I did in this video. Just I guess a touchy subject, really. Still really a fresh wound, I guess you could say. Fresh wound.
That said, everybody,